Hi, this is Korinne Carpino, and today we're going to paint autumn roses. I found this photo in the Inspiration Gallery in the Alcoholic Society November Experience, and I have a piece of Dura matte film, some alcohol and blending solution. I'm going to be using brick and rust, and I got some cranberry and crimson and a light yellow, some oranges, and I have some greens. And I'm just going to put some rose colored ink in my palette and let it dry out a little bit. And for brushes, I have a liner, a 1, a 3, and a 4. I've started by actually using a piece of clear Dura and tracing out the flowers and the main leaf. I'm going to put this on a piece of white paper, put my Dura on top, and be able to follow my design sheet. I'm going to start by working on the roses. Put a little isopropyl alcohol in my cup, and I'm using my number 1 brush. I'm going to use that rose color, and I'm going on the edge of that weld palette to get the ink that's drier. And I'm just going to start by coming over the lines around the edges of those petals. And I'll outline the whole thing to start. And now I'm going to do the second rose the same way. So my ink is fairly dry because I'm pulling it from the edge of that palette, so I can actually make thin lines with it. For the smaller roses, I'm going to use Valencia orange. Again, just kind of outlining the petals. And once that's done, I'll start to fill things in. I have a number 3 brush here, and I'm using the ink much lighter now, putting a little shadow underneath where the petals meet. And wiping some of that ink off, wiping it back now, and just putting a thin coat. I'll put several other coats on this as well before I'm done. Just defining now the underneath part of the petal, adding a little ink here, and now I'll spread that out. This is my second coat. And now I'll start to fill in the other petals. And you'll see as I go along, I get the color in, I pick color up, I put color back down until I get the shape of the flower the way I want it. Just coming in now. Again, we'll add some ink. We'll put in that shadow again. And we'll start to define the middle of the flower. I'm going to switch to the number 1 brush because the center of this rose is smaller. And I'll work back and forth as I paint. And I have the number 3 brush again, and now I'm smoothing this out a bit and removing some. Pick my paper up, take a look at where I'm at, and I'll fill in this darker petal. I'm going to do the same thing with the other rose. Just spreading my ink out, working back and forth. And this one I'm just kind of getting my color in, and then I'm going to work on the shadows. This one I'm adding a little bit of yellow in the center. I'm going to try that out and see how we like it. And now I'll add that shadow again, just like we did with the first flower. And really define where the petals of the rose are. Constantly picking up my paper to just double check where I'm at. Now I'm going to come back. My number 3 brush is still a little damp. And just kind of lighten areas up and soften them. So I have another palette off to the side that unfortunately you can't see. And this time I'm coming in with that, looks like sepia ink, sepia brown, and defining the edge where the shadows are on the edge of these petals with that brown. And now I'm coming in with some Valencia orange. And we'll start to put some color into the petals. And I'll go back and add the highlights. Again, coming in with that sepia. And then coming in with the Valencia. And now we're just, with a damp brush, pull some of that ink back and give more shape to these flowers. Okay. Again, just checking where I'm at. Adding a little more ink to the back there. It's a small space to work in. I'm going to just define where my little vine is. I'm using teakwood ink for this. And I have a little of that brick red ink, and I'm just trying that out. And I'm not crazy about the color. So I switched to cranberry. And I'll come in, probably add several coats. You can see I start in the middle of the leaf. You can see how I put that other color down in that one. So as the ink spreads, I can see how far it's going to spread, so I don't go outside of the lines. Now, if I did, it'd be easy enough to pick it up with a little bit of alcohol or blending solution. Okay, working back and forth. I'm going to come down now and finish this other little rose. Again, sepia for the shadow areas and Valencia for the main petals. Working with the number 1 brush, ink is fairly dry. So that I can control where it goes. And I'll come back to my little leaves. I keep pulling back some of the ink in them to create some texture. And deciding I'm not crazy about that particular texture. And so I'll go over them later and add additional texture. Let's just get the general leaf in and our main color in on all of our leaves. So again, I'm using cranberry. Any dark red would do. Just wanted something that wasn't quite as red as that brick. And we'll just fill all of these in. I'm doing my outline and then now the middle. Okay, I do have this big red leaf to do. I'm going to use the number 3 brush, and this time I am using brick. I want a little bit different color of red. And again, we'll just get the color down first. And we need to come down around that rose as if the leaf is tucked in behind there. That's going to clean up the line a little bit here. And so here I'm trying to move that ink back, and I'm not happy with how it's working with the brush. So in a little bit, I'll get a Q-tip and clean that ink out. Now I've got a damp brush and I'm pulling some of that ink back just to create some lights and darks in it. Okay, there's a little makeup cotton swab. I put a little bit of alcohol on it and I'm just cleaned up the edge of the leaf. Now I have some honeycomb ink out, and I'm just going to, with my number 1 brush, kind of dab that ink into these little flowers and then add some Valencia around the outside and blend them. And I'm blending with just a damp brush and also pulling some texture into it, but not actually trying to paint individual petals. Again, a little bit of Valencia around the outside, a little bit of texture with a damp brush, and just cleaning up that edge there. And I'm going to add a little bit of pitch black ink in the centers. Now I'm going to come and do this little flower that's on top of the leaf. I have some sunshine yellow ink, which I was getting evaporated there on the palette. I now have some Mountain Rose ink. Now Mountain Rose isn't made anymore, but you can use a similar rose color. Mixing those two together a little bit and just painting in some additional petals. And then I'll go into the pitch black ink and put a center in that too. Okay, now I have a damp brush, just damp, and I'm just pulling back a little bit of the ink to kind of make a center vein in these leaves. I decided they're not the star of the show and I didn't want to give them a lot of texture. So I'm going to remove the painting and flip the whole thing over. So now I'm working on the back side of the paper. And because I have a lot of real estate, I'm working with a number 4 brush. I'm starting with my darkest green ink and I'm using Wilderness here. And I'm just going to start to pull that through the background. Want it pretty dark around these flowers in order to make them pop. And I'm going to pull that line kind of in a semicircle right down through the painting. And I will be blending this with other colors as we go along. And I don't really have to worry about getting this green ink over my flowers. If I do, I can pull it back again because my leaves and flowers are painted on the other side of the paper. So now I'm taking some meadow ink, a little bit lighter, and coming around the rest of the flowers, creating a little lightness in that area. And my ink is wetter now, you can see. I'm just kind of swirling my brush around and pulling that ink around. And then when I get to that dark green, you can see I come down right through it and blend. And I'll do the same thing on the opposite side. I'll get my greens in and I'll blend. And now my lightest areas of green, I'm using limeade and blending it into the other greens. So there's no harsh lines between where one green starts and another green ends. And I'll just continue to put that light in. And that was with the limeade. Can get a little red up in this corner, as if this vine's coming down out of something. Kind of wiping some of it away and blending it with my gloved finger. I'm also going to add a little bit of that Valencia orange. Something's growing up in that corner. And I'm going to do the same thing in this bottom corner. You can see I'm bringing that orange right into the green area so that, again, I don't have a harsh line. And I'm going to take this dark green and kind of pull it right down into that orange area. And take a little more brick, add it up in the top here. Now I'm going to emphasize my line. I'm using sepia ink and my liner brush, and now just emphasizing that vine on the back side too. I'm going to splatter now, just put some ink on my brush, and I'm banging it over the back of another brush, and just add some additional color around, as if there's some small flowers in the background. I'm using that dark green ink again. I think it's mixed with something because I can see from the color it's not quite that dark green. It's probably the meadow, and it ended up mixing with some red. And that's fine. So I'm going to put some berries in, and in order to do that, I have to remove the green ink. And I have a little bit of blending solution in that container you saw me use. And I'm just using a Q-tip now to pull back. And I'm using a little sepia to create kind of the little stem. I'm going to create another little stem on this other side here. And I'm thinking about where do I want the stem to go. In the meantime, I'm going to create some more areas where I pull the ink back to white so I can put some berries in here. And I have that red brick color, and I'm just going to fill these berries in. And I really wanted to have some red on that side of the composition as well. Pull the eye around. Now I'm using a Sharpie marker, and I'm just putting the veins in the leaf. I'm also using a liner brush and some sepia ink, sepia brown, and just going over the back side of the shadows of these roses. Now you'll see as we go ahead or move on, I'm going to come back and forth on these roses a couple more times, because I'll decide that these lines are just need to be a little bit softer. So if you're watching this and you're going to paint, you could just soften those lines up at this point and not have to come back and do it later. Adding a little bit more orange ink to this flower on the back side, creating a little depth. And finishing off with that rose-colored, the part of the rose that comes around the leaf there. Just cleaning up some areas. And I'm going to be flipping back and forth as we finish this up. So I'm going to take a look here at what I have. I can see I definitely want this rose to get pulled back a little bit, so it looks like it's sitting in front of the leaf. And I also am using a damp brush to just push that green ink closer to the rose, to the leaf. I've got some white space I need to cover. And you can see I'm kind of pulling that brush out and dabbing so that it looks like there's some texture back there. Okay, I'm going to clean up. Again, I'm just doing cleanup, damp brush, pulling that green ink closer to my leaves, breaking up any hard lines that I saw on the other side. So I'm just moving things around a little bit. I'm going to come back and just adjust this rose again, yet again. And just pull some of this back. So I take away ink, I add ink. Just adjusting the shape a little. I added a little bit of alcohol to my ink to reactivate it, adding a little bit more color, darkening the whole flower up a bit. And then I'll come back and do my highlights in a minute. Okay, clean brush and highlight, just kind of lighten up the petal. Make sure it looks like it's sitting in front of the leaf. Highlight some of these other petals. So I'm doing this, I'm actually removing some of the ink. You can see me tapping my brush off on the side of the paper towel as I take the ink out. Otherwise, I would just be moving it around and not removing it. Okay. And here I am, as I mentioned earlier, I was going to just soften. So damp brush just softened those lines a little. Put more highlight in by pulling the ink back. Putting some ink back in. It is just a back and forth with it. Okay, I'm just pulling some ink back, moving the yellow that's already on there, adding some dimension, adding some dark ink, a little bit of, looks like red, and then I'm going to be pulling that back again. So we have to add ink in order to subtract ink. And now I'm making my lights just by pulling that ink back. Adding another coat of ink to these little flowers. And actually, by the time I'm at it, one of them kind of disappears anyway. Getting some stems in the background on these flowers. I'm constantly checking back and forth. Decided these stems need to be more prominent, and we're going to move the berries to the front of the painting. And so in order to do that, I don't want them to be really heavy. So I'm taking some of the ink out on the back. And now I'm going to actually use some, I think it's crimson ink, to just, yeah, this is crimson, just to get these in. And because I have some ink on the back and I have some areas that are light, I have some dimension in the little berries. Okay, this petal's still bothering me. And now I think it looks more like it's coming over the front of the leaf. Okay. So this is close to being done. I think what I usually do is kind of sit with it overnight and see where it's going to go, and then decide how I'm going to finish. All right, so I've definitely decided I don't like all the texture in that bottom petal, and so I'm just pulling some of it back. I also noticed that there's a lot of green in the back, and so you just saw me remove that with a damp brush. I'll put the ink back in and then pull it smooth. And I'm happier with that petal. Just get my highlight back and my shape. Checking the back, I think I have a little spot of ink on that flower. I just want to get off on the back side. And that's just a little bit softer. I like that a bit more. Okay, so I've got my roses and my dappled sunlight in the back. And I did look at this the next day, and you can see I wasn't happy with that top corner and brought more of the orange and red ink around to more vignette the whole scene. So I hope you enjoyed this demonstration and can't wait to see your roses.